No? Is it Mike? Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from the break, and a big welcome to all the people joining us online. How are you doing? I believe we've Rand is connected. Are you there, Rand?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Hey, Rand. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Welcome to Dublin.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. It's a lovely city.
Give you a shot at the crowd here. We've got a huge crowd of really eager digital marketers looking to get some pearls of wisdom for you. Can everybody give Rand a wave?
Oh my God! What a lovely crowd.
Thanks so much. Well, we're aware it's very early in the morning over there, so thanks for tearing yourself out of your bed to come talk to us.
I am definitely not in my pajamas. Look at how I have showered and dressed and had my coffee. You know.
Particularly sharp and well groomed. Okay, well, look, Rand, I'm gonna open the floor to you. I know everyone's really keen to hear what they need to be doing in 2015 to win the internet, and they're all really excited to hear from your good self.
Great. I'm looking forward to this. Well, I'll start by saying what I want to do over the next 30 minutes is I'm going to spend the first half talking about some particularly big trends that we've been seeing at Moz and around the industry. And then I'm hoping to take the latter 15 minutes and dive into some Q&A. I'm sure you guys have specific questions that you want to have answered. Sorry, go ahead.
We're going to have lots of time for Q&A at the end. If you want to ask Rand a question, simply tweet with the hashtag #AskRand, and then we'll be taking a selection of the questions at the end.
Yes, great. Perfect. All right. You can hear me okay? Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Terrific. So yeah, let's dive in. Let's start with some of these big trends that I wanted to chat about. So the first one, I bet you're seeing this as well. I think it's an insane frustration for many marketers of all stripes, and that is the emergence and growth of dark traffic. So what I mean when I say dark traffic is essentially, I'm going to get on here's my mobile device, right? And if I perform a search on here, depending on how I perform that query, Google may or may not send a referral string that says this person actually typed in this, some phrase and then came to my site. Now, keyword not provided has been with us for a few years now. That's a big frustration. But a new frustration is that a ton of traffic that is being reported as direct, right, that you see in Google Analytics or Omniture or WP Stats or StatCounter. StatCounter is based in Dublin, by the way. It's an awesome local company. A lot of those referrals are not really direct. That's not someone typing in that URL fully. What's happening there is search queries, social traffic. A ton of dark traffic is Facebook coming from their apps on mobile or on tablet. Some of it's even coming from their website, we think. And so you just have this huge frustration of saying, hey, I as a marketer have done an extraordinary amount of work to get a lot of social traffic from Facebook, to get a lot of search traffic from Google, and I am not getting the credit for it because these referrals are being counted in direct. And I think that's a big frustration. I do, however, see some light on the horizon, and I think that's going to come in two forms. One, many marketers and consultants are starting to manually analyze direct traffic and look at where that direct traffic is going. And look, direct that comes to a home page that's clearly directly typed in, that's one thing. But if it's going to deep URLs on your website, especially if it's going to deep URLs that also happen to be getting a lot of traffic from Facebook, from Twitter, from Google+, from other social media sources that day, that's probably not direct, right? That's probably a result of the social sharing. And the same is true when you see correlations between, hey, our rankings improved, we started seeing more search traffic to this page, and we also started seeing a lot more direct traffic to this page. That's probably actually search. And I've seen some great studies from folks showing that, you know, high percentages of direct traffic, somewhere between 40 and 60%, are probably combinations of Facebook and Google not reporting traffic. So I think that's something we need to be aware of. Analytics tools, I believe, will eventually catch up with this. I'm not sure about Google Analytics, but I think a lot of the analytics tools are going to start creating these correlations and connecting this up so that we can see, hey, you know, implied social, implied search, that's something I expect to see in traffic sources, predictive traffic, in the next few years from web analytics. So I think that's a huge trend, big, really important topic, something we're going to hear more and more about over the next few years. Second big thing, I think we're seeing a huge rise in the investments in content marketing. So content marketing has been very hot the last 2 or 3 years. It's going to be even bigger in 2015, and I expect in 2016 as well. Unfortunately, I think one of the results of this big boom in content marketing is the massive growth in the quantity of content that we create as marketers and as website owners and businesses as a whole, but not necessarily a huge increase in the amount of attention that web users of all kinds and mobile users have to devote to content. And so therefore, we're producing a lot more noise, and consumers of content have a much harder time discerning the signal from that noise. You know, if 5 years ago the average web user was exposed to, you know, a couple hundred pieces of content today via all their social channels and their email and what they browsed on the web and that kind of thing, today I'd say that number is 3, 4, 5 times that size, right? Content advertising networks, the quantity of content that's shared on social has grown tremendously. The quantity of content that we're trying to share through email newsletters and subscriptions has grown tremendously. The quantity that we're trying to share through direct channels, through marketing and advertising channels, it's just overwhelming. And standing out from that crowd, I think, is what's going to make or break the great content marketers and the great marketers in general, right? If you can be one of those folks who puts together something that your audience truly cares about, and not just cares about, but cares about enough to want to amplify, which I think is the key to having a great, successful content marketing strategy. Whenever I talk to folks about content marketing, I always ask the question, who will help amplify this content and why? And I think if you don't have a great answer to that question, then you probably shouldn't be creating that content in the first place. All right. Third thing, third big trend that I think we're seeing is a really positive one, actually, and that is the growth of SEO as a marketing discipline. So there's some good things and some bad things about this. One of the things that I found fascinating is that over the last 3 years, unexpectedly, I think SEO is losing and to a certain extent has lost a lot of its previous, slimy, manipulative reputation. I think that's a result of a few things. One, I think that professionals in the marketing field are recognizing how critical SEO is, how much traffic search engines can drive, and so businesses and organizations of all types, of all sizes, are making professional investments in SEO in one way or another. They're hiring consultants, or they're bringing people full-time onto their teams, they're training marketers on it, whatever that is. However, and at the same time, Google has done an extraordinary job. I really commend them and their web spam team for what they've done over the last 4 years to combat manipulation. And I think as a result of that, you're seeing, maybe 90% of the SEO industry 5 years ago was white hat. I think that's up to about 97, 98%. There's many fewer spammers as a percentage of the whole of SEO practitioners. Spam is much less effective. It's much more short term. It's much more dangerous now than it ever has been. I don't love all of the implementations of how Google has done spam, but I can't argue with results. I think that has helped push our profession into a really great place. One of the most interesting statistics that I have about this comes from LinkedIn. So every year LinkedIn collects their top 25 job skills that got people hired. And they look at that kind of from doing a statistical analysis across their entire network. And this year, for the first time in the top 25 was SEO. And it was actually in the top 5. I think it was number 4 out of 25 was SEO as a skill. And also in the top 10 or 15, I think, was internet marketing more broadly. So, we're seeing web marketers in huge demand. And I think that's going to be a continuing trend. This is a really good thing if you're in the SEO field, in the web marketing field. I think your job opportunities are expanding. For those of us who employ web marketers, I think we're going to see, a little bit of a tougher demand on the salary side, and potentially a little bit harder to find candidates as everyone is starting to compete for these folks. I think web marketers are going to become a little bit more like web developers have been for the last decade. And we're seeing that in the statistics and in the salary growth numbers and those kinds of things. So good news for web marketers, and a little tough for employers of web marketers, but in a good way. I think the fourth trend I want to talk about is the expectations around mobile. So mobile has obviously grown tremendously. One thing that is a myth is mobile has not eaten or consumed very much desktop time. I think desktop use and laptop use as a percentage has declined maybe 5 or 10% from a few years ago. So we're definitely using our mobile devices massively more, but we're not necessarily cannibalizing time from laptop and desktop. I think the only place where that's really true is for very young folks, kind of under 21, under 25 sometimes. You'll see more usage of mobile, and there's a prediction that that's going to continue. I'm not sure about that. I think there'll definitely be more and more increasing mobile use. I'm not sure that, particularly in the professional world, for those of us who are in B2B, that it will really cannibalize desktop laptop time. I just don't know whether this, with its the input and the screen, is going to be enough to do that. However, what mobile is doing to desktop is changing expectations, user experience expectations, speed expectations, navigation expectations, and it's changing those in really interesting ways that I'm not sure our desktop experiences have caught up to yet. So, one of the most salient and obvious examples is from a speed perspective. So I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, there were a lot of reports about web page load speed, and essentially if you were under 4 seconds to load a web page, you were in pretty good shape, right? Less than 4 seconds to load the full page, and your abandonment rate was fairly low, and your completion rate was fairly high, and yes, you could get some benefit by bringing it to 3 seconds, but not that much. Mobile, however, I think because of how apps have been developed. So one of the interesting things, right? Think about an app like Facebook, where as you're looking at one baby picture from a friend of yours, Facebook is actually prefetching and loading the next 10, 20 posts underneath that in the background, so that as you scroll, it's seamless, right? Facebook has preloaded stuff. They may even be preloading in the background when your app is not active, so that when you click on the Facebook app, everything appears in milliseconds, not seconds. So that's very, very impressive, and that performance is something we see in apps overall, right? They're prefetching, preloading in the background. This is something that web pages don't really have the option to do, but mobile web expectations have become such that if your web page load speed on even on a mobile device, even when the connection is not that great, is over 2 seconds, consumers, users, visitors start getting frustrated, right? Their mindset changes. They're more likely to abandon. They're less likely to consume the content. That's really, really hard on mobile web developers, and it's hard on desktop web developers as well, right? Because you're trying to design an experience to fit those things. So I think this is a continuing big trend, something we're going to have to think about from a user experience perspective. Tangential to that, or related, but indirectly to that, is what's been happening in SEO, I think, as a result of Google getting better at quality, and Google also doing something very new, well, moderately new, with machine learning moving to deep learning. And there's some great articles that you can read about Google's move to deep learning, but essentially the gist of it is this. Rather than having an individual input like PageRank or the number of unique linking IP addresses or the keyword matching and topic modeling matching directly going into the algorithm in very clean kinds of ways, the ranking algorithm that we're looking at from Google now is far more complex, far broader, and it uses a machine learning type of system. So that means essentially Googlers say, here is what a successful query looks like, and if we're seeing successful queries, then that means the algorithm is working, and so the algorithm itself takes in thousands of inputs and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of derivatives and combinations of those inputs to produce a ranking system that best matches up to successful queries. That's a new kind of change, and I think that's one of the reasons why you no longer hear representatives from Google saying, this is a ranking signal, that's a ranking signal, and this is a ranking signal. Instead, it's like, well, there's a lot of inputs, and no one can really understand what happens inside that black box of machine learning. That started with Panda and evolved into other algorithms, and I think it's being used or will be used soon directly in the main ranking algorithm. So as a result, we sort of have to do broader branding types of things, right? The more amplification, the more voice, the more reach we have on the web, the greater the chances that those signals will be interpreted positively by Google. And the more successful searchers are, the happier they are with our results, the better we're going to rank, as opposed to the more keyword targeted or the more unique linking root domains or the more anchor text of this particular type. Those things may help us, and probably will, but it's in a much less direct format. And if we're not producing that, happy searcher, successful query, doesn't matter what signals we've got, we're going to be out of the results. So those are the 5 big trends I wanted to share with you guys that we're seeing and that I think we're going to be talking about for the next year. And I'd love to hear from you, questions that you've got. I'm happy to go deep and tactical, high level and strategic, talk about any of these things or anything else related to SEO, to web marketing, or to Moz.
Okay, great stuff, Rand. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Absolutely brilliant. So we've got lots of questions coming in from
Awesome.
Twitter. So let's start off with this one. Okay, this one's from Catherine Tattersfield, and she's asking, will user experience become as important as backlinks?
Catherine, I believe it will for 2 reasons. One is because of this, Google's new interpretation of what makes for a happy searcher and whether a result delivers on that. And you can see this, I think the simplest metric that I've seen talked about that Google and Bing have sort of, I don't want to say admitted to using, but have talked about as being part of their process is pogo sticking. So let's say I perform a search query. I'm going to search for yellow shoes, right? I need some new yellow shoes. I search for yellow shoes. I get my result, and your website is ranking #1. It's catherinesfootwear.com. And I click on that result, and then I scroll for 5 or 6 seconds, but I don't really see what I wanted. Like, you have 1 pair of yellow shoes, but they're out of stock. and it's kind of hard to find where the other ones are. I click the back button and I choose someone else's result. I click that, I go to their website, and I end up completing a transaction there. Well, you know, what Google sees is that pogo sticking behavior. And as a result, they basically say, hey, this person didn't have a successful search journey when they reached Catherine's website, and so, you know what, we're going to rank that URL lower. And they're not going to do that with one person, right? But over the course of hundreds or thousands of searches, and, you know, over the course of the tens of thousands of queries that your website might show up for, that will start to happen. And so user experience, I think, is going to be absolutely huge. It's already really big. And then the second reason it's really big is the second order effects that it has, right? The indirect input that user experience has on earning links, earning social shares, earning amplification. These things can't be underemphasized. I think if you have phenomenal user experience, the rate at which people share and amplify of any kind, right? Social sharing, sharing over email, talking about with their friends, linking to on their blogs and websites, talking about in the news, all of those things will improve with user experience. So, you know, think for every 100 people that you bring to your site, maybe one of them amplifies today. And if you grow that user experience, maybe 5 out of 100 will amplify. That's massive. So for those reasons, I believe that user experience and links are going to share the spotlight for a while.
Great stuff. Thanks. Good question and super answer.
Great question.
Next question is from Rossa Butler, and Rossa wants to know: are there any insights or studies that show whether PPC impacts organic rankings?
Yeah, I have seen some stuff. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been SEMrush or Search Metrics. What they did not show is that it directly impacts. What they did show is a reasonably good indirect correlation. Essentially saying, hey, look, a lot of the people who advertise for these results often also tend to end up somewhere in the organic results. It's not universally true, but I think that makes reasonable sense, right? You have marketers working on promoting those pages, they're paying for that traffic, so they're probably doing things on the organic side. I think paid search has a very small indirect influence. I fully believe Google when they say it has no direct impact.
Okay, thanks. And just to add to Rand's answer, Rossa, we have a theory in Wolfgang that there is an indirect impact because generally your PPC traffic is your best performing traffic. And we've been speaking a lot about if you have a good user experience, Google's going to rate your website more highly. So we believe if you add a chunk of high performance traffic to your websites overall, it's quite likely Google's going to view you a bit more favorably off the back of that.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about it. If you're doing a great job of improving user experience for those PPC visitors, you are also improving the experience for all the other visitor types, right? So there's just a lot of indirect ways that can help you out.
Great stuff. So next question, there's a couple of questions, Rand, on a similar topic. So we're talking about how fast does it take to get ranked. So let me read out the specific question here. From Harry Lawrence: Rand, do you believe there is anything within Google's algorithm that enables new sites to compete with established sites? And the second question on the same topic just asks, if you are a new site, what kind of activities can you undertake to try and get ranked fast?
Yeah, I historically have seen some examples of kind of what I'd say it's kind of the freshness boost, right? So there's two things. One is query deserves freshness. That's the QDF algorithm from Google, and it hasn't been talked about much for a few years, but did get a lot of attention 3 or 4 years ago. And QDF basically says for certain kinds of queries, people are looking for new content, things that have just been published in the last few days or week. And you know, sports scores are a really good example of that. A lot of queries for celebrities, a lot of queries for events that are in the news or topics that are very hot in the news, that kind of stuff. And Google will trigger that query deserves freshness and look for things that have just been published. That said, it doesn't necessarily bias to new websites. It tends to bias to, established, powerful sites that are producing new content. There have also been theories that I've seen out there, and I would say I've seen moderate evidence, not overwhelming evidence of this, that Google does give a temporary boost to new sites that achieve some level of amplification and ranking signals early in their life, and they kind of give them almost what I'd call like a fighting chance in the search results, and then they're going to see how that traffic performs and whether people are having successful search queries and the user experience is good, and then you might see some positive results of that. And then the flip side of that is what we used to call the Google sandbox, where you did not perform well. It appears maybe you spammed or manipulated your way into the rankings with some of those ranking signals, and people are not having a great user experience, or Google thinks these signals aren't continuing on, so you're out of there, and then it's very, very hard to rank for anything. So I would say these things are still theoretical, but potentials. And then on the what can a new site do, I would really urge you to, well, two things. One, I just did a Whiteboard Friday that was published a few hours ago on establishing an SEO strategy by kind of asking yourself these 5 core questions. And for a new site, I would absolutely ask yourself those 5 questions, establish a strategy, and then get to the tactical level from that, right? And that's a good place to start. I would also say that when you have a new site, one of the opportunities that you have that you won't have as much when you're more established is to reach out to folks and ask for feedback and say, hey, we're brand new on the scene, and we'd love if you would check us out for the first time and give us your thoughts and impressions. And that can work with media, with journalists, with bloggers, with social media influencers, all sorts of stuff. So if you have those relationships or have the opportunity to build those relationships and reach out and try and get that feedback early, I think that's something I would urge every new site publisher to do.
Great, and I'm hoping we can squeeze 2 more questions in, Rand, before we finish up. So this one, we've spoken quite a bit about visual content already this afternoon before you joined us. Do you have any tips for, this is from @Paul Biederman, any tips for how about visual content optimization?
Yeah, a few things on the visual content side. First of all, I think visual content is going to continue to be huge. I mean, the growth of Pinterest and Instagram is just almost unbelievably high. It's pretty remarkable. And I think that visual content is also performing really, really well on Facebook. It performs really well on Twitter. You can see correlations between tweets that get retweets and tweets that include images. So I think visual content is going to continue to be very powerful. However, I think a lot of marketers are making really junky visual content, right? They're using stock photography and stock images. They're doing, kind of crummy, low-quality Photoshop, or they're trying to be overly professional rather than authentic. And I think that authentic visuals, even if they're not super polished, even if they're not gorgeous, those resonate so much better than kind of the polished professional but wholly inauthentic stuff. And so I would urge folks who are investing in visuals to do that. As far as optimization goes, by the way, for Google Images, there's a great post on Google Image Search Optimization. I think it's on Moz, from Michael Cottam. So if you look him up, you'll find that post on Moz, and he wrote kind of a great treatise on how to get your images into Google Image Search and sort of the on-page and off-page things that you can do around that.
I just have to assure the audience that wasn't a setup. Rand, we were showing some case studies about half an hour ago that are authentic images. A girl in her bathroom taking a selfie was getting 10 times higher engagement rates than our stylized, graphically designed images.
Yeah, right. So people are very scared of this. I'll use Whiteboard Friday as an example. Look how crappy my little stick figures are, right? If you go look at the latest Whiteboard Friday or any Whiteboard Friday, the drawings are not good, but they are authentic, right? They do come directly from me, right? I'm up there on the whiteboard, like sketching out these really crummy images, and I think that has a certain kind of resonance that more polished professional stuff that doesn't come from the heart of the people and the heart of the brand that you're trying to communicate with or that you're engaging with just can't achieve that same level. It doesn't resonate in the same way. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Right. So just before we finish up, I see there's a guitar there over your right shoulder.
It's actually a ukulele. I'm not talented enough to play a guitar.
Ukulele, Rand?
Yeah. Sure. Well, maybe we'll save that for the next time.
Down there for a second.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got...
Would you like to play us a little song on the ukulele?
Okay, hang on just a sec. Actually, we're a little out of tune right now, so I think we're going to have to play that next time, because I do not have the bandwidth to tune it. Sorry about that.
We're out of tune and we're also out of time, unfortunately, but thanks very much for having a go. Rand, that was absolutely sensational. Oh. Really, really brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You guys are so kind. Please, feel free to tweet more questions at me, and I'll be on Twitter for a little while trying to answer those. So if I can be helpful, just let me know.
You're a gentleman. Thank you very much, Rand.
All right, take care.
How about that? Absolutely brilliant. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move to the 5 key takeaways people can action today. We still have our viewers around the world with us. How are you doing? So we're going to quickly shoot through 5 key takeaways that you can all action when you get back to the office today. Well,